They thought he was just another quiet man with rough hands and a dusty jacket. 5 fearless biker queens laughed when he walked into their bar whispering bets and dares. Win and marry us all, they teased. But when he pulled back his shirt and the POW tattoo over his heart came into view, the room fell silent. What happened next would change everything they thought they knew about men war love and themselves. This is the story of a silent oath, a second chance. And the night 5 biker queens met the man who made them believe again. The snow whispered as it fell soft flakes, spinning down from a pewter sky and dusting the mountain town of Crescent Ridge. The kind of place where folks knew each other's dogs by name, and where secrets froze beneath layers of winter silence. Logan West didn't make noise when he walked, something his daughter Emma always found both fascinating and unsettling. He moved like a shadow that didn't ask permission to be there, but never felt out of place. Today, the only sound accompanying him was the faint creak of his worn leather boots and the rhythmic squeak of the little cart he pulled behind him. Inside it sat a covered object, long, heavy, and wrapped in a weathered tarp. Emma, 9 years old, and bundled in a red coat 2 sizes too big, trudged beside him. She was used to the silence between them, but even for her, today felt quieter than usual. "Daddy?" she asked softly. "Do you think it still works?" Logan glanced at the cart. "It used to." "That's not a yes." His lips curled faintly, not a smile exactly, but something warmer than cold. "That's all I've got right now." They turned the corner onto Main Street, where faded banners still hung from Christmas 2 weeks past. Most of the shops were shut. Only one place buzzed with life, a low-slung building of corrugated steel and neon the iron lantern. Motorcycles lined the parking lot like chrome soldiers in formation. Thunderbirds, Harley's Indians. Some gleamed like showpieces. Others were battered veterans of the road. The rumble inside the building, a mix of laughter, rock music, and revving engines, made Emma glance up at her father. "You sure this is the place?" "I'm sure," he said. "It's the only place in town that can fix something this old." He knocked the snow off his boots, unlatched the tarp, and revealed the bike, a 1942 Harley WLA military green paint, chipped but proud. A machine from another war, another life. "Let me do the talking, okay?" he said. Emma raised an eyebrow. "You barely talk." He opened the door anyway. Inside was warmth and tension, the kind of tension that snaps to attention when someone not from here crosses the threshold. 5 women sat at the long bar, leather-clad, and laughing like they owned the room, which they did. They weren't just patrons. They were the Steel Valkyries, an all-female biker crew known across 3 states. They all turned as Logan walked in. Emma close behind. The music dipped, as if the room sensed something had changed. He stood still, letting the cold swirl around him before it dissolved into the heat. The tallest woman with jet-black hair in a tight braid and a scar tracing her jawline spoke first. "Well now, who let the ghost in?" A few chuckles. Logan said nothing. Another woman, auburn hair chain, belt eyes sharp like a hawk, grinned and propped her boots on the bar. "This a repair job or a charity case?" Logan wheeled the bike forward. "I heard someone here could handle a real rebuild. That got them interested." The black-haired woman slid off her stool and walked over, eyes roving over the Harley like she was reading a battlefield story in the dents and rust. "Who told you that?" she asked. "Guy named Mick in Boulder." She nodded. "Mick's got a big mouth. But he's not wrong." Emma stepped forward. "This was my uncle's. He never made it home." That sentence hit harder than any of Logan's silence. Still, the mood shifted again back to tough. The 5th woman, short and broad-shouldered, barked a laugh. "So you want us to fix a ghost spike?" Then the black-haired woman turned toward Logan again, appraising him like a sergeant inspecting a new recruit. "You got a name, Logan?" Logan. What West? That made a few eyes narrow. The name meant something. Maybe a memory. Maybe a headline. The leader crossed her arms. You don't talk much, Logan West. I've said what matters. That's when the auburn-haired one leaned in, flashing a half-smirk. Tell you what, quiet man, fix that bike with us. Prove yourself, if you can beat each of us in the ride next Friday. Hell, we'll all marry you. The room exploded in laughter. Emma frowned. That's a weird prize. Logan didn't flinch. He just slowly unzipped his jacket. Silence dropped like a hammer. On his chest, just beneath the collarbone, was the ink, faded but unmistakable POW, MIA beneath its 7 names. No first names, just initials. Ranks. Years of disappearance. The kind of tattoo you don't joke about. The kind of ink that carries ghosts on your back forever. The black-haired woman, the leader, stepped forward slowly. Her smile vanished. One of the names matched a tag she wore on a chain around her neck. She reached for it instinctively. Everyone else in the bar stayed quiet. Emma whispered, "They're his friends." The leader's voice was suddenly low. "One of them was my brother." Logan said nothing. The music was still playing in the background, but no one heard it anymore. There are moments in a bar when noise dies, not because someone told it to, but because something sacred just entered the room. This was one of those moments. For a long time, no one moved. The air inside the iron lantern hung heavy, not just with smoke and snowmelt, but with memory. War had a way of crashing into a room long after the last bullet had been fired. And in this moment, it wasn't Logan's silence that held the room captive. It was the ink on his chest. The name engraved there, Sergeant M. Knox, QMI 2003, matched the one on the silver tag that now trembled in the fingers of the woman standing before him. She looked at the name on his skin, then back at the dog tag on her chest, then back at Logan, and something inside her cracked. "I'm Harley," she said. Finally, her voice lower now, stripped of bravado. "Harley Knox." Logan gave a slow nod. "I carried his body 4 miles, he said softly. He took the blast. I made the promise." Emma looked up at him, eyes wide. Harley took a breath like she was surfacing from deep water. Her hand dropped from the dog tag, and she stepped back slowly, no longer. A woman holding court, but a sister remembering. Behind her, the other 4 biker queens exchanged uncertain glances. Harley turned toward her crew and raised her hand. "Back off." That wasn't a suggestion. It was an order. The others, Scarlett, Danny, Raven, and Jules, returned to their stools without another word, but their eyes never left Logan. He zipped his jacket back up and turned to Emma. "Why don't you wait in the truck?" "Kiddo," Emma hesitated. "You sure I'll be out in a minute?" She nodded, squeezed his arm, and walked out. No one stopped her. When the door shut, Harley let out a long breath. "Come with me." She walked past the bar through a curtain of beads that led to a back room, half workshop, half war museum. Motorcycle frames hung from the ceiling like skeletons. Shelves were lined with old helmets, gas masks, wrench sets, and photos, dozens of them. Soldiers on bikes, women in uniform, faded letters pinned beside them. Logan stopped at the doorway, quietly taking it all in. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. Harley turned to face him. "You served with him?" "We enlisted together," Logan said. "Camp Pendleton. Same unit, same bunk. Everyone told me he died instantly," she whispered. "That no one saw it." "I saw it," Logan said. "I held him for 22 minutes. Long enough to promise I'd come find you." Her throat tightened. She looked down, biting her lip. "Why now?" she asked. After all this time, Logan's jaw worked. "I was lost. Took me years to walk out of my own prison. I didn't have words, Harley. Not the kind that mattered." She nodded slowly, as if understanding that silence could be louder than grief. For a long moment, neither said anything. Then Harley turned toward the old Harley WLA that Logan had hauled in earlier. "This is his bike, no." It was my brother's, Logan said. Another ghost. Harley blinked, the weight of his quiet answer hitting hard. You carry a lot of them, don't you? I keep their names, he said simply. She brushed her hand over the bike's frame, then looked back at him. What do you want from us? I want this running, Logan said. I want to ride it where they can't. Harley nodded slowly. We'll fix it, but not for money. For him, and for my brother. She extended her hand. He took it, one firm shake between people who understood things too heavy for words. When they stepped back into the main room, the music had resumed, but the atmosphere had shifted. Scarlett, the redhead with the piercing laugh, arched a brow. So the mystery man speaks. He's family, Harley said flatly. Scarlett scoffed. That easy? No, Harley said. Not easy. Just right. Jules, the smallest but most fiery of the bunch, tilted her head. So what's the plan? Harley, we fix his bike and throw him a parade. Something like that, Harley replied. And if anyone here's got a problem with it, they can take it up with the patch on my vest. No one said a word. Logan sat on the far stool, quietly watching, taking nothing for granted. He didn't ask for pity. He didn't expect welcome. But he saw it, the shift in the air. The guardedness, while still present, had thinned. The edge dulled. Scarlett poured a shot of bourbon and slid it to Logan. You ride? She asked. Used to. Still got it. I'll find out. Danny, the tall, silent woman with the full sleeve of roses and thorns, leaned on the bar and studied him. You ever lose someone and think, maybe you weren't the one meant to come back? Logan looked her dead in the eye. Every day. The bar fell quiet again, but this time not with discomfort. With respect. Harley finally broke the tension with a grin. You know about that challenge earlier? Logan raised an eyebrow. The win and marry us all bit, she said, chuckling. That was a joke, I figured. But she said suddenly serious ride with us next Friday. Run for the Lost. Annual ride to honor MIA and POW soldiers. You ride that old ghost machine. Bring your daughter. You in? Logan looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded. I'm in. Scarlett clinked her glass to his. And for the first time in years, Logan West sat among strangers and didn't feel like a ghost. The wind howled outside the iron lantern like it was clawing to get in, carrying snow memories and the kind of chill that seeped into the bones of men who'd once walked deserts and jungles. But inside the bar was warm now, not just from the heat, but from something harder to name. The silence hadn't really left. Even with music spinning again from the vintage jukebox in the corner, a gravelly Willie Nelson tune, there was a new kind of quiet threaded beneath it. Not awkward, not hostile. Something else. Something like respect. Logan sat at the end of the bar, hands wrapped around a mug of coffee poured by Jules, the youngest of the 5 biker queens. She'd stopped eyeing him like a stray dog, though her eyes still carried fire behind their dark eyeliner. Harley was back behind the bar, but she hadn't spoken much since they returned from the workshop. She kept polishing a glass that didn't need polishing. Gaze flicking toward Logan every so often, like she was checking to see if he was still real. Scarlett, perched 2 stools down, broke the silence. So the ink, she said, sipping straight bourbon, that real. Logan looked at her. He didn't answer immediately. Jules leaned on the counter. Come on. That POW MIA piece can't be just for show. Logan's voice was steady. It's not. He unzipped his jacket again, slower this time, like opening a page of scripture. The bar light caught on the ink, faded, but proud. POW MIA. Below it, 7 names, ranks, years. And beneath that, a phrase etched in smaller lettering, barely visible, unless you were close. You are not forgotten. Harley froze the rag in her hand, falling limp. Raven, who had been silent until now, sharp-cheeked and stoic. A woman who rarely spoke without purpose, set her beer down gently. "That's not a tattoo," she said. "That's a headstone." Logan didn't flinch. "It's both," he said. Danny, with her rose and thorn sleeve, moved closer. "You carry them with you. I promised I would." Scarlett stared at the names, her fingers running along her own wrist, where a small, shaky line of script read for Eli. Harley stepped forward, her voice low. "Why those names? They were my team. We deployed together. Most of them didn't come home. 2, we never found." She swallowed, "Including my brother." Logan nodded. "I marked them," he said, "because someone had to." For a long moment, no one said a word. Then Jules pulled up a stool, sat beside Logan, and said, "I never knew anyone who carried names. Most people try to forget." "I can't," Logan replied, "and I don't want to." Emma slipped back into the bar, at that moment snowflakes melting on her shoulders. She climbed quietly onto the stool next to her dad. Scarlett raised an eyebrow. "She's allowed in here." Harley gave a half smile. "She's the only thing in this bar keeping us all from turning back into what we used to be." Emma looked at the women curiously. "What did you used to be?" Jules smirked. "Worse." Emma blinked. "Worse than bikers. That made them all laugh, a real laugh this time. The kind that breaks tension like a hammer to glass." Harley exhaled. "All right, kid. You win. You stay. But no whiskey. Hot cocoa. I'll see what I can do." While Harley went into the back to look for supplies, the women circled around Logan and the bike. Danny crouched beside the Harley WLA. "This isn't just vintage. It's sacred." "My brother kept it in a shed," Logan said. "Didn't run for 20 years. He said someday we'd ride it together. He didn't make it home either." Scarlett stood up straight, eyes softening. "You lose a lot of people, huh?" Logan didn't answer. He didn't have to. Raven leaned in. "What's the plan?" "Now. Fix it. Ride it till the snow melts." "Ride it," Logan said. "Next Friday. With you all," Jules whistled. "That's bold." "Not bold," Logan said. "Necessary." Harley returned, steaming mug in hand, and handed it to Emma. She hesitated before sitting down across from Logan. "I should have recognized your name," she said quietly. "Mason wrote about you in his letters." Logan looked up slowly. "You were the one who gave him your extra rations," she added. "The one who sang when things got bad." Logan gave a single nod. He said your voice sounded like it had been broken and rebuilt out of gravel. A ghost of a smile crossed Logan's lips. "That's generous." Harley leaned forward. He also said if anything ever happened to him, you'd know what to do. Logan's jaw tightened. He always believed I could carry more than I should. Harley's eyes met his. "Maybe you can. Maybe that's why you're still here." A beat passed between them. Not romantic. Not yet. But something had shifted. An invisible bridge. Jules broke the moment. "So if he's joining the ride, we gotta get this beast running." Scarlett grinned. "And we've got less than a week." Raven cracked her knuckles. "Then let's get to work." The next few hours passed like a heartbeat. Tools clanged, sparks flew, voices raised, then softened. Emma sat on a stool, sipping cocoa and watching as her father worked beside the biker queens, his hands steady, his eyes clear. For the first time in years, he looked like he belonged somewhere. And for the first time in years, the tattoo on his chest didn't feel like a burden. It felt like a bond. The morning snow came with a hush, blanketing Crescent Ridge in clean white silence. It covered the roads, the fences, the crooked mailbox outside the iron lantern, and it softened the world like nature's apology. Inside the garage behind the bar, time worked differently. The cold metal of the Harley WLA had slowly become warm again under grease-streaked hands, and laughter that came in cautious waves. It had been 2 days since Logan showed up. 2 days since the tattoo. 2 days since anyone in that building looked at him like a stranger. and yet there was still a wall. Not one you could see, but the kind you felt. Logan felt it strongest with Harley. She hadn't said much since that night. She worked in silence tools, clinking against chrome sweat on her brow, hair tied back like a soldier on mission. When she looked at him, it was with something between suspicion and sorrow, as if she was still searching for the boy who carried her brother home. But walls never last when pain is shared. And pain was beginning to surface. It started with Jules. They'd taken a break that afternoon. Emma was helping Jules clean out the back room, brushing snow off boxes and laughing about something silly. Logan couldn't hear what. Then the laughter faded. He saw Jules sitting on a workbench, rubbing a faded scar on her wrist. Emma stood beside her, gently saying nothing. Later, as Logan wiped down the gas tank, Jules walked over to him and said almost offhand, "You ever think about the ones who got out but still didn't make it?" He paused. "All the time," he replied. She nodded, pulling out a cigarette but not lighting it. "My dad made it back from Afghanistan. 2 years later, he blew his brains out in the garage." Logan didn't speak. "He left me his dog tags." Jules added, fishing them from her jacket pocket. "I wear 'em when I ride. Not to remember him. To remind myself I'm not him." He looked at her. Really looked. "You're not." She stared at him a beat longer, then nodded and walked away. Later that evening, as Harley adjusted the carburetor, Scarlett tossed a wrench aside and said, "Y'all remember Eli?" The room went still. Scarlett never brought up Eli. Harley looked up. "Scar. He was my husband," Scarlett said, voice steady. "Army medic. Loved chocolate pie and bad jokes." She took a breath. "The night before his last deployment, we got in a fight over something stupid. I told him not to come back." Logan paused mid-wipe on the oil pan. He didn't. Silence. "I started riding 2 weeks after the funeral. Found Harley in a diner in Utah. She let me ride with her. Said I looked like I needed an open road and a reason not to drink myself to death." Harley didn't look up. She kept working. Scarlett glanced at Logan. "You carry your names on your chest. I carry mine in the rearview mirror. But either way, we all ride with ghosts." Danny spoke next later when the sun dipped behind the pines and the garage was soaked in amber. She rolled up her sleeve without a word. There, woven into the vines and thorns, were names. 3 of them. No ranks. No years. "My boys," she said simply. Harley looked over. "Twins?" Logan asked. Danny nodded. "Born 10 minutes apart. Died 4 months apart. Street racing. I told them not to chase speed. But how do you stop something you taught them to love?" No one answered. I joined the Valkyries the day after the funeral. Needed something fast enough to outrun memory. Still haven't found it. Logan watched her roll the sleeve back down. "You didn't run," he said quietly. "You ride. There's a difference." She smiled for the first time. "So they say." By the time dusk fell, the Harley WLA had a new heart. The engine purred for the first time in decades, loud, steady, alive. They all stood around it like veterans watching an old friend breathe again. Logan knelt beside the bike and ran his hand across the tank. "She's ready," Jules said. "Almost," Harley replied. "One thing missing." She disappeared into the back room and returned with a tin box. Inside it, decals, emblems, and an old stencil. She handed it to Logan. "For the tank," she said. It was Mason's unit insignia. 2nd Battalionth Marines. Logan stared at it, then looked at Harley. "You sure?" Harley nodded. He'd want it. He took the stencil, pressed it against the metal, and began to paint. Stroke by stroke, the emblem took shape, a silent tribute, not just to Mason, but to all of them. That night, after everyone had left, Logan sat on the back steps of the bar. Snow was falling again. Emma lay curled up inside, asleep in a pile of biker jackets. Harley came out, coffee in hand. They sat in silence for a while, watching the flakes swirl under the porch light. Finally, she said, I didn't mean to be cruel when I joked about the marriage thing. I know. She sighed. It's easier to be tough than it is to feel anything real. Logan looked at her. I spent 7 years in a POW camp, he said softly. The only thing that kept me alive was feeling something real, even if it hurt. Harley blinked. I couldn't cry when they told me Mason was gone, she admitted. I didn't cry until tonight. He didn't reach for her, didn't touch her hand. But he looked at her like he saw her not the leader, not the armor, but the sister who'd been carrying silence longer than anyone knew. You keep your pain neat, he said, like it's in a drawer somewhere. Harley's voice cracked. I'm tired of drawers. Logan looked up at the stars. So open them, he said. Let someone help you fold it. She exhaled slowly. Then she reached into her jacket, pulled out Mason's last letter, and handed it to him. I think it was meant for you. Logan held it like it might crumble. And in that stillness beneath the stars and snow and ghosts that never quite left a bridge, quietly finished being built. Not from grief, but from truth. The next morning began with quiet purpose. The Harley WLA, once a relic buried beneath rust and memory, now stood gleaming beneath the glow of the garage lights. The women had polished it till it gleamed like it remembered what it meant to move. It wasn't just a machine anymore. It was a witness, a time capsule, a tribute. Logan ran his hand along the newly painted tank, where the emblem of the 2nd Battalionth Marines had dried overnight. The insignia felt right there, like it had always belonged. In the corner, Emma sat on an upturned milk crate, swinging her legs a faded red ribbon clenched in her hand. She'd been holding it since breakfast. A simple piece of fabric, nothing remarkable, but she'd been tracing her thumb over it like it held magic. Harley noticed it first. What's that? She asked gently. Emma looked up wide-eyed and matter-of-fact. It's my lucky ribbon. Scarlett chuckled, wiping her hands with a rag. You bring luck in that thing, huh? Emma nodded. I wore it the day I found my dog, and the day we found that eagle feather at Mom's favorite hiking trail. And I was holding it the first time Dad laughed after a long time. Logan glanced over. That memory of Emma placing the ribbon in his lap while he sat silently on the porch months ago washed over him like sunlight on old stone. I think Emma said, standing up, this bike needs it more than I do now. Harley straightened. You want to put it on the bike? She asked. Emma nodded, her eyes suddenly serious, as if she knew she was handing over something sacred. Harley looked at Logan. She's got your heart? Just louder. Logan gave the smallest of smiles. She's everything I'm trying to be. Emma approached the bike. The Valkyries stepped aside, making room for her, like royalty entering a cathedral. She crouched near the handlebars, then paused and looked at Harley. Where do you think it should go? Harley thought for a moment. Front fork. That way it catches the wind. Emma nodded and carefully tied the ribbon, slow and deliberate, as if she were performing a ceremony. The frayed edges fluttered gently. It'll remind the bike where it came from, she said, brushing her hand across the gas tank. And where it's going. Scarlett blinked rapidly and turned away. Danny gave her shoulder a squeeze. Raven muttered something about checking the rear brake and walked off, eyes glinting too bright. Jules knelt beside Emma. Why give it away if it's lucky for you? Emma looked up at her. Because Daddy already found what he needed. He just didn't know it yet. The day moved forward in a rhythm that was almost musical. Wrenches, clicking tools passed wordlessly, the occasional hum of an engine echoing like the heartbeat of something being rebuilt from more than parts. Logan worked side by side with Harley, the silence between them no longer laced with tension, but with something softer. A shared understanding, the beginnings of trust. You've raised her well, Harley said, quietly tightening a bolt without looking up. She raised me, Logan replied. Harley looked over. That's supposed to be poetic. It's just true. They worked for another minute before Harley said, "You ever tell her about what happened?" "About the war?" Logan hesitated. "She knows enough," he said. The nightmares explained what words couldn't. Harley nodded slowly. "I used to think telling the truth would make it worse, but I think not telling it leaves a hole too." Logan met her gaze. Some holes are better faced than filled. She didn't reply right away. Then he said you were like a wall, quiet, steady, but strong. Said if anything ever happened to him, I could lean on you. Logan's throat tightened. Mason said a lot of things, not lightly. The sound of Emma's laughter echoed from the back room, where Jules was showing her how to change a bike's oil filter. The sound didn't clash with the garage, it completed it. Harley turned back to the bike. "When you ride with us Friday, there's a stop near the ridge, final turn before the lake. That's where we scatter the ash of someone we've lost." Logan nodded. "I'll be ready." "No," Harley said. "You already are." That evening, after the tools were hung up and the bike was stored for the night, the Valkyries sat around the fire pit out back. Emma roasted a marshmallow with Jules, who pretended to be too cool to enjoy it, but kept sneaking the perfectly golden ones when no one was watching. Harley handed Logan a metal mug of coffee and sat beside him close enough for warmth, not for show. Danny leaned forward and asked Emma, "You really believe in lucky things?" Emma didn't hesitate. "I believe in kind things. What's the difference one lasts longer?" That answer turned the firelight into something more than heat. It turned it into memory. Harley stood up, walked into the garage, and came back with a worn leather patch. She tossed it to Logan. He turned it over. It read, "Steel Valkyries. Honor not noise." "It's yours," Harley said, "for Friday's ride." Logan stared at it. "I didn't earn this." Harley stepped closer. "You carried a promise for 12 years. You gave a name back to a sister who thought it was lost. You showed 5 women who stopped believing in men that decency doesn't die in a uniform." She paused. "Patch or no patch. Logan West, you ride with us now." He stood up, and for the first time in years, he let someone hand him something that wasn't grief. Later that night, when Logan tucked Emma into the back of his old pickup parked beside the bar, she whispered, "Daddy, yeah, do you think Mom would have liked them?" Logan looked out at the glowing fire pit, where 5 biker queens were laughing, swearing, and making s'mores like kids at camp. I think he said voice low she would have called them your new godmothers. Emma giggled, rolled over, and hugged the spare leather jacket Harley had let her borrow. And in the falling snow beneath the flutter of a single red ribbon tied to a resurrected war bike, Logan stood under the stars and felt something return. Not peace exactly, but something close, something like home. The sun broke through the clouds that morning, like it had been waiting for something sacred to begin. A golden light spilled across Crescent Ridge, melting just enough snow to reveal the blacktop underneath. The air was crisp still, and charged, like the road itself was holding its breath. By 8:00 a.m., the Iron Lantern's parking lot was filled with over 30 bikes, their chrome catching sunlight like medals of honor. Most belonged to riders who knew the Valkyries by reputation, some by blood, others by battle. No one showed up for small talk. They came to ride for the lost. At the center of it all stood Logan's 1942 Harley WLA, freshly oiled, shining like a memory reborn. The red ribbon Emma had tied fluttered softly in the breeze, a single line of color on an otherwise steel-gray canvas. Harley approached him dressed in full black riding gear, her Valkyrie patch stitched proudly across her back. She handed him a half-face helmet. "You nervous?" she asked. "No," Logan replied. "I'm remembering." Scarlett whistled and called out to the crowd. "All right, listen up. This isn't your Sunday joyride. It's the ride of remembrance. You fall in, you ride clean, and you ride quiet. This one's for the ones who didn't come home." The crowd murmured assent. Danny climbed up on a milk crate and raised a hand. "We'll stop at 3 points. Each one's for someone we lost. You want to pray, pray. You want to cry, cry. You want to stand in silence, do that. But don't joke. Not today." Raven added, "If you came here for noise, turn around. This ride's about honor." And with that, the engines came to life. A slow rollout began Logan between Harley and Jules, with Emma riding in the sidecar the Valkyries had rebuilt just for her. She waved solemnly, her jacket zipped to her chin, holding tight to the edge like it was the safest place in the world. The road out of town curved gently through a narrow valley where the snow hadn't yet melted. Trees arched overhead like a cathedral roof, filtering the light into columns of gold. No one spoke. The only sound was the rumble of engines, low and respectful, like a drumline beneath a eulogy. The first stop was at an old wooden bridge that spanned a slow-moving creek. Scarlett parked her bike and removed her helmet. The others followed suit, Logan included. This was Eli's favorite fishing spot, she said, her voice steady. "We used to skip rocks here after church. When the funeral came, I couldn't get through the service, so I came here instead. Through one rock for every year I knew him." She reached into her saddlebag and pulled out a small, smooth stone. Scarlett stepped forward and dropped it into the creek. The sound was barely audible, but the silence that followed it thundered. Each rider placed a stone after her. Logan waited until the end. He picked up a rock from the bank, rough chipped, and pressed his thumb into it. "For those who never came back," he said softly. "And for the ones who did, but never found home." He dropped it. Ripples spread outward. Nobody said a word. The second stop came an hour later up a winding mountain road that overlooked a frozen lake. This was Raven's place. She didn't speak right away. She just stood there, staring down at the sheet of ice below. "My sister drowned here," she said, finally. "I was supposed to be watching her." Logan didn't move. Neither did Harley. Emma, sensing something sacred, stayed seated in the sidecar. She was 10. I was 15. I never forgave myself. Raven opened a flask and poured a line of bourbon into the snow. She wanted to fly planes, she said. Now she flies the wind. Logan stepped beside her. "You're still carrying her," he said. Raven looked at him. "How do you know? 'Cause I recognize the weight." Her chin quivered for half a second before she turned away. One by one, the others took a moment. Jules laid down a flower. Danny traced initials into the frost with her glove. Emma stepped down, quietly walked over to Raven, and handed her the red ribbon. "You can borrow it," she whispered. "Just for today." Raven didn't reply, but she took it. The final stop came just before the lake turnoff and overlook, with a view that stretched for miles. This was Harley's place. No one needed to ask. The moment she parked, Logan knew this was Mason's Hill. She stood alone at the edge, wind tugging at her braid. She unzipped her jacket and pulled out a folded American flag, creased well-kept and worn at the edges. "He used to sit right there," she said, pointing to a moss-covered stone. Said this was the only place that made him feel like the world was still good. Logan walked beside her. Emma stayed behind this time, knowing this moment didn't belong to her. Harley turned to Logan. "He wrote me a letter," she said. "The last one? I never opened it." Logan's breath caught. "Why not?" "Because I was afraid he'd say goodbye." She handed it to him. "I want you to read it. Here. Now." Logan took the envelope carefully. The paper was yellowed. Mason's handwriting, blocky and unhurried, stared back at him. He unfolded the letter. "Harley, if you're reading this, I didn't make it home. But don't cry for me. I went doing what I chose beside the man I trusted most in this world. Take care of Logan. He won't ask for help, but he'll need it. He carries too much, but he carries it well. He's got a good heart, even if it's been torn. And if he ever shows up at your door, let him in. That'll be me knocking, too. I love you. Always have. Always will." Mason Harley wiped a tear and laughed through it. Stupid Marine. Logan folded the letter and handed it back. "No," he said. He knew exactly what he was doing. Harley looked at him, eyes red-rimmed but unafraid. "I think I'm ready now," she whispered. For what? To stop being angry that he left? Logan didn't answer. He simply stood beside her shoulder to shoulder until the wind settled and the silence turned gentle. That night, the riders returned to the Iron Lantern. No one celebrated. There were no cheers, no music, just quiet nods, soft embraces, and a sense of something unspoken having been said. Emma sat on the counter sipping cocoa again, still wearing Raven's spare gloves. Harley walked over to Logan. "You kept your promise," she said. He looked at the red ribbon now tied around his wrist. "So did you," he replied. She smiled. "See you tomorrow. Wouldn't miss it." As he turned to leave, Harley called out, "Logan," he looked back. "Thank you for riding slow enough for the rest of us to keep up." He paused, then smiled. "Wasn't for you," he said. "It was for the ones behind you." That night, the fire crackled behind the Iron Lantern, sending sparks into a sky blanketed with stars. The rite of remembrance had ended hours ago, but none of them were ready to go home, not yet. Not when the air still hummed with memory. Not when the silence between them had turned into something they could finally share. The Valkyries had dragged out folding chairs, thick blankets, and a half-melted cooler of beer. Jules handed out marshmallows on skewers with a kind of reverence, like they were peace offerings instead of sugar. Emma sat curled up next to Logan, wrapped in Danny's oversized biker jacket, eyes heavy with sleep, but refusing to miss a second. Harley stood with her back to the fire for a moment, looking up at the stars. Then, wordlessly, she sat down in the last empty chair next to Logan. The flames cast a warm light across their faces, flickering across leather patches, silver rings, and tired eyes that had seen too much for too long. No one spoke for a while. Then Scarlett cleared her throat. "I've never told anyone this," she said, nursing a beer bottle that had long since gone warm. "But when Eli died, I didn't cry at his funeral. I got up, said all the right things, smiled at his mom, and thanked people for the flowers." She looked down. "Then I got drunk, found his dress blues in the closet, and wore them to sleep for a week." Danny reached across and squeezed her arm, no words needed. Scarlett exhaled. "It wasn't the silence that killed me. It was the casseroles, the cards, people trying to fix something they didn't even understand." Logan nodded slowly. "They mean well, but they don't know the language." Scarlett raised her bottle in a half-toast. "To everyone who ever meant well, but missed." They all clinked bottles and cups together. Even Emma's mug of cocoa got a gentle tap. Harley turned to Jules. "Your turn." Jules looked down, then shrugged. "My mom left when I was 6. Left a note that said she needed a life without chains. I asked my dad what that meant." "What did he say?" Emma asked softly. "That I was the chain," Jules replied. The group went silent. "I ran away at 16, Jules continued. Joined a crew that made this one look like nuns. Harley found me in a bar in Nevada cleaning tables for pennies. I had a busted lip and a backpack with 3 shirts and a broken phone." She looked at Harley. "You gave me the patch before you even knew my last name." Harley gave a slow, warm smile. "I figured the road would teach you the rest." "It did," Jules whispered. "And so did you." Emma reached over and touched Jules's hand, small and sincere. "Your mom was wrong," she said gently. "Chains don't leave flowers behind like you did today." No one responded, but Jules blinked fast, then looked away. The fire popped, scattering embers skyward. Danny leaned back and finally spoke. My boys were born premature, spent months in the NICU. I didn't know how to hold them, like I was scared I'd break them just by loving them. Her voice was low, steady. Then one day, the older twin, Noah, gripped my finger so tight I thought he was fighting back. And I believed it. I really believed it. She paused. But we lost him 3 days later. Caleb followed 4 months after. I stopped going to church, stopped talking, got rid of every baby photo I had. When I found this crew, I didn't even own a mirror. Couldn't stand the sight of my own face. She looked at Logan. You ever forget what your own voice sounded like all the time, he answered. Danny nodded. Then one day, Raven found me in a motel parking lot, sitting on the hood of my car, staring at a closed road sign. What were you doing? Emma asked. Danny shrugged, waiting for a reason not to drive into the canyon. The fire fell into another hush, and Logan asked. Danny stared into the flames. She said something I'll never forget. Just 3 words. Jules leaned forward. What Danny glanced at Raven. Raven looked into the fire, then said quietly, "Ride with me." They sat with that for a while, the kind of silence that isn't empty but full of the weight they had carried, full of the moment they began to set it down. Logan poked the fire, gently shifting the logs. Harley turned to him. "You've heard all of ours. You got one to tell." He didn't answer right away. Then he looked at Emma. "She was 3 when I came home," he said. "Didn't know who I was. Wouldn't come near me for the first week." He set the poker down and folded his hands. I'd spent 7 years in a cell with no windows, no clocks, no names. They broke my ribs twice, took a fingernail, starved me for months. But nothing hurt like the way she flinched when I reached for her. The fire cracked again. Emma rested her head on his arm. But she gave me time, he continued. She gave me mornings, crayons, spilled milk, books with the last page missing. He looked up, voice steady. And one day she climbed into my lap and said, "You smell like sunshine." I didn't cry then, but I did later when she wasn't looking. Harley swallowed hard. "You never talk about it," she said. "I do now," he replied. They sat late into the night, passing around stories like maps of places they'd survived. No one tried to fix anything. No one offered advice. They just listened. Scarlett tossed another log on the fire and said, "You know what, I think?" What Harley asked. "I think maybe we weren't broken, just waiting for the right people to help us remember how to be whole." Danny raised her bottle, "To the ones who stayed." Jules added, "To the ones who came back." Harley looked at Logan, "To the ones who carry us all." They clinked again. Logan leaned back, Emma asleep on his chest now. And for the first time in years, as the fire danced and the stars blinked overhead, Logan West closed his eyes and didn't see war. He saw 5 women laughing. He saw a red ribbon tied to chrome. He saw a little girl who smelled like sunshine. And he saw himself not lost, not broken, but finally found. The morning after the fire was quiet. Not heavy, just still, like the world had exhaled after holding something sacred all night. Frost dusted the bikes like powdered sugar. A hawk circled above the ridge. And inside the iron lantern, Emma sat cross-legged on the bar counter, carefully drawing angels in her notebook with a red crayon she'd found beneath the jukebox. Harley, hair still wet from the shower, leaned on the edge of the counter and watched. "You draw a lot of angels, huh?" she asked. Emma nodded, tongue poking out as she shaded a wing. "I like how they fly, and how they don't have to explain anything. They just are." Harley smiled faintly. "Wish people were like that." Emma looked up. "You don't believe in angels?" Harley paused. "I used to. When I was little." "What happened?" Harley sat on the stool next to her and rubbed her hands together. "My mom died when I was 8. She was sick for a long time. My dad said she became an angel. I believed him. For a while." Emma blinked. And then I started looking for signs, like feathers, or dreams, or light in weird places. Harley's voice dropped, but I never saw anything, so I stopped believing. Emma went quiet, staring at her drawing. Then, without looking up, she said, "Maybe she didn't send feathers. Maybe she sent Mason." Harley turned sharply. What Emma looked up, now eyes clear and unwavering. "Maybe your mom sent your brother instead, to take care of you." Harley opened her mouth, then closed it again. Emma continued, "And maybe Mason sent Daddy." "So you don't stop looking." Harley's throat tightened. "You really believe that I do," Emma said. "Because angels don't always have wings. Sometimes they ride motorcycles." Out in the garage, Logan was checking tire pressure on the old Harley when Scarlett strolled in, hands in her pockets and a grin tugging at her lips. "She's got your spine," she said. Logan looked up. "Who your daughter? She says what the rest of us are too scared to say. She gets that from her mom." Scarlett walked over and crouched beside the sidecar. "You ever think it's weird how sometimes kids carry more light than the adults who are supposed to guide them?" "All the time," Logan replied. "She said something to me last night," Scarlett added, her voice softening. "Said, maybe we're not broken, just waiting." Logan smiled. "She said the same to me once. I told her broken things don't shine." "What did she say?" "She said, that's why they need light inside." Scarlett exhaled, standing. Damn. By noon, the Valkyries were gathered around a long table inside the bar, planning their next charity ride. Logan helped Jules fix a shorted-out fuse box in the corner, while Danny and Raven sorted through donation receipts. Harley stepped out of the back room, holding a small cardboard box with faded tape and a Sharpie label Mason's letters. She placed it gently on the table and looked at Logan. "I think I'm ready," she said. He set down his screwdriver and wiped his hands. "You sure?" "No," she said. "But I don't want to carry them unopened anymore." Emma scooted closer, hands folded in her lap. Harley opened the box slowly. Inside were neatly bundled envelopes postmarked from bases around the world. One was crumpled. One still smelled faintly of engine oil. Each one was a voice waiting to be heard. "I've only ever opened one," Harley said. "The last one, with your name in it." Logan gave a quiet nod. Harley reached for a letter dated 6 months before Mason died and unfolded it. She read aloud. "Harley, riding across Kandahar feels like breathing fire. It's dust and chaos and prayers over cracked radios. But at night, when the sky opens up, I think about you. I think about the way your boots used to slap against the kitchen floor. I remember how mad you got when I borrowed your tapes without asking. And I miss home. God, do I miss home. But you should know, Logan's the one keeping us human. He fixes radios with tin foil, sings blues during blackout drills, and never lets anyone forget who we are. He doesn't say much. But when he does, everyone listens. Take care of him, sis. When he gets back, make him laugh. He's earned that. Mason." No one spoke for a while. Harley folded the letter and set it on the table. Then she looked at Logan. "Did you know he wrote about you like that?" "No," Logan said, voice rough. "He never told me." Emma slipped off the stool and hugged her father's arm. "Told you you're someone's angel." He looked down at her, swallowed hard, and kissed the top of her head. That evening, just before sunset, Harley asked Logan to come with her up the ridge road. They rode in silence, the bikes kicking up light trails of dust as the sun hung low behind the trees. At the top of the hill, where the land fell away into open sky, she parked and removed her helmet. "I used to come up here after his letters," she said. "It was the only place I could read them without breaking." Logan dismounted and stood beside her. "Now I want to make a new memory here," she added. She turned to face him. "Do you know what scares me more than losing someone again?" What he asked, letting someone in and then losing myself. Logan said nothing for a while. Then he looked her in the eye. You already found yourself, Harley. The day you picked up 5 broken women and rode with them across hell. She blinked, chest rising. And the day you handed a kid a mug of cocoa like it was sacred, he continued. And the day you opened a letter in front of the people who needed to hear it. She exhaled, slow and shaky. So what now? She whispered. Logan took a step closer. We ride, he said. For what? For the ones we lost. For the ones who found us. And for the ones who believed in angels when the rest of us forgot how. As the sun sank behind the mountains, casting long orange rays across the valley, Harley reached up and touched the dog tag around her neck. Logan touched the red ribbon still tied to his wrist. 2 relics of the past, 2 reminders of everything they now carried forward. Side by side they stood, and somewhere far beyond the ridge, the wind carried a name. Mason. But this time it didn't hurt. This time, it felt like a blessing. Saturday morning arrived wrapped in fog, soft and cool, like a memory that hadn't quite settled. The iron lantern was quieter than usual. No clanking tools, no revving engines, just the sound of boots on concrete, and the scent of fresh coffee drifting through the wide garage bay doors. Harley stood over a folding table layered with maps, duct tape, and a half-eaten bag of trail mix. The run for the lost is tomorrow, she said. 30 miles through the ridge roads, 1 fuel stop, 1 food stop, and 1 final push to Memorial Point. We've got 50 registered riders, civilians, veterans, 1 senator's son, and a Gold Star mom. Scarlett let out a low whistle. We're making this official now, Jules added. We got news coverage too, local affiliates sending a camera crew. Danny raised an eyebrow. You think Logan's ready for all that attention? Harley glanced toward the far end of the garage, where Logan sat alone on a low stool, tightening the last bolt on his brother's bike. Emma stood beside him holding a flashlight like a soldier on post. He didn't come here for a spotlight, Harley said. No raven chimed in from the doorway. But sometimes the ones who avoid it deserve it most. That afternoon, the Valkyries held their pre-ride event, a community ride and repair day. Locals brought out old bikes, battered helmets, broken chains. Logan spent 3 hours showing a teenage boy how to reseat a carburetor and another hour replacing brake pads for a Vietnam vet named Hank, who wore his service cap backward and called Emma the boss. Emma, in turn, had created a kindness booth using cardboard and leftover glitter. She handed out hand-drawn notes to strangers that said things like, "You're still growing, and maybe today is your sunrise." One note she gave to Raven simply said, "Even thorns protect something." Raven didn't smile, but she folded the note into her jacket and tapped Emma's shoulder before walking away. Then came the challenge. It started with noise, an unfamiliar growl of pipes echoing down the main road. Heads turned. A pack of out-of-town riders rolled in, 9 in total. Big engines, high handlebars, leather patched with skulls and desert insignias. Their leader was a thick-set man with mirrored sunglasses and a chipped tooth. His jacket read, "War Dogs, MC, El Paso Chapter." He dismounted and gave Harley a cocky smirk. This the famous Iron Valkyries. Harley crossed her arms. That's right. The man glanced around at the crowd, then nodded toward Logan, who stood wiping his hands on a rag. "How, the one we heard about?" "The Marine with the ghost tattoo." Logan didn't answer. Harley stepped forward. "He is. What's it to you?" "Name's Rooster," the man said, grinning. "We heard about your run tomorrow. Big ride, lot of honor talk. Thought we'd swing by, see if your new boy's got the engine to match the ink." Jules muttered, "Here we go." Rooster kept grinning. "Tell you what, friendly wager. 1 lap around Ridge Loop. Fastest time wins. If your boy wins, we donate $5,000 to your cause. If we win, he wears our patch for the day." Harley's jaw clenched. He's not a circus act, Logan spoke quietly. "I'll do it." Harley turned. "Logan, I'm not doing it for them," he said. "I'm doing it for the ones who can't." Rooster snorted. "You sure Pops Ridge Loop ain't a place for second chances?" Logan nodded once. Neither was Ramadi. Rooster's smile faltered. The riders gathered near the entrance to Ridge Loop, a twisting mountain pass with blind turns and steep climbs. It wasn't long, but it was unforgiving. The crowd lined the starting point. Emma stood next to Jules, eyes wide with worry. Harley walked up to Logan and handed him his helmet. "You don't have to prove anything to anyone," she said. "I'm not," Logan replied. "I'm just finishing what I started." She looked at him for a long moment. Then, without a word, she fastened the chin strap for him. He turned the key. The WLA roared to life, not loud, but steady, like an oath. Rooster pulled up beside him, revving like a showman. "Try not to fall asleep on the curves, Grandpa." Logan didn't answer. He just looked ahead. Then the flag dropped. They took off, Rooster surging forward, tires spinning on gravel. Logan followed close, no flash, no drama, just controlled power. The ridge road twisted immediately into a climb. Rooster leaned hard into the first curve, his back tire slipping slightly on a patch of ice. Logan didn't lean. He flowed, like the road had waited years to feel his weight again. The Harley WLA wasn't fast, but it was true. It didn't lurch. It didn't buck. It remembered the rhythm of rough terrain and trusted the man holding its reins. Rooster hit the final incline with speed, trying to lose him. Logan held back. Then right before the final curve, a hawk shot across the road. Rooster flinched. Logan didn't. He eased into the bend, like a whisper, dipped the bike just enough to feel the edge, then pulled up clean on the final straight. He didn't pass Rooster. He didn't need to. He crossed the finish line 3 seconds behind, but he never once risked the bike, the memory, or the promise tied to the red ribbon still fluttering on the fork. Back at the lantern, the crowd erupted not in cheers, but in applause. Slow, steady, respectful. Rooster dismounted, cheeks flushed. He looked at Logan and offered a gruff nod. "Wasn't about winning for you, was it?" "No," Logan said. "It was about not forgetting how to ride slow enough to remember." Rooster scratched his head. "Damn." He walked over to Harley, pulled a wad of cash from his vest, and handed it to her without a word. Then he turned to Emma and gave her his only patch with a silent salute. Emma stared at it like it was treasure. "You earned it for him," Rooster said. Later that evening, as the garage doors rolled down and the smell of chili filled the air, Harley found Logan outside, sitting on the step with Emma asleep beside him. "You didn't need to do that," she said. "I did," he replied. "For Mason, for the ones watching." She sat beside him. "You could have won." "I did win," he said. "I walked away." She smiled. "Tomorrow's the big ride." Logan looked at the sky. "I think I'm ready now." She leaned her head against his shoulder. "You've been ready longer than you think." And under that quiet twilight, as Ridge Loop wound silently behind them, and tomorrow's ride loomed on the horizon, Logan West understood something sometimes. The greatest test isn't about how fast you ride. It's about how much you remember while you do. The wind was gentle that morning, brushing softly through the pines behind the iron lantern. Logan stood alone beside the WLA, one hand resting on the leather grip, like he was listening to something no one else could hear. Tomorrow was the run for the lost. But today belonged to silence. He walked slowly toward the side lot where his truck sat, the one he'd rebuilt piece by piece with Emma on summer evenings. In the glove box, beneath a faded photo of his wife and a crumpled coloring page Emma had once handed him in church, lay a letter. He hadn't looked at it in years. He pulled it out carefully. The envelope had yellowed at the corners. On the front, written in block letters in pencil. "To Claire, in case I never find the words. His hands shook slightly as he unfolded the paper. The ink was faint in some places, the pressure too light, written during a time when food was rare and warmth even rarer. He sat on the tailgate, let the wind fill the stillness, and read, "Claire, I've started this letter 100 times and thrown away every draft. There's no elegant way to explain where I've been or why I came home with pieces missing. You always said I had silence in my bones, and you weren't wrong. But now I carry a silence that doesn't sleep, a silence made of names, smells, and the sound of boots I can't hear anymore. I miss the smell of your shampoo in the morning. I miss the way your hand always found mine in crowded places. I miss the arguments about how to load the dishwasher. If I don't come back, I need you to tell Emma I tried. I need her to know I thought of her every night. I memorized her face from the photo you tucked in my sock before I left. But if I do come back broken, quieter, and unsure of how to be her dad, I hope you'll meet me at the door anyway. Because I don't want to be a ghost. I want to be a father. Even if I have to learn how all over again." When he finished, he didn't cry. He just sat there, staring at the ink like it might change if he looked hard enough. He had written that in the 2nd year of captivity. Before the rescue. Before the years of therapy and muttered prayers and nights alone on the porch, while Emma slept inside, not yet calling him Dad. He folded the letter again and slipped it into his coat pocket. Not the glove box this time. Today he would carry it with him. Inside the bar, Harley was wiping down the tables when Emma came bounding in with a brown paper bag and a huge smile. "I brought something for Daddy." Harley smiled. "What is it?" Emma opened the bag to reveal a sandwich wrapped in foil, a folded napkin, and a drawing. "He forgets to eat when he remembers too hard," she said. Harley knelt down. "You're something else," you know that Emma grinned. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Do you think my mom would be mad if Daddy started smiling again?" The question hit like a quiet bomb. Harley blinked. "What do you mean?" Emma sat on a bar stool, swinging her feet. "Sometimes I see him looking at you when you're not looking. Like he's remembering something, but also not sad." Harley sat next to her. "Emma, your mom was amazing. I can tell just by knowing you." Emma beamed. "And no." Harley added, voice soft. "I don't think she'd be mad. I think she'd be glad he finally had someone to talk to." Emma nodded. "Me too." Then, mischievous as ever, she leaned in. "Also, you make really good cocoa." Harley laughed. "So that's what it's really about." Emma gave a dramatic shrug. "I'm 9. I go where the cocoa is." Later that afternoon, Logan came inside, letter still in his coat pocket. Harley was alone at the bar, wiping glasses out of habit, not need. He approached slowly. "I found something," he said. "Oh." He sat beside her, placed the letter between them. "I wrote it for Claire, but I never sent it." Harley hesitated. "Do you want me to read it? I think I want you to hear it." He unfolded the page. His voice was low, cracked in places, but steady. He read every word. Harley didn't interrupt. When he finished, she said nothing for a long time. Then she reached across the table and laid her hand gently over his. "You did come back," she whispered. "Not all of me." She squeezed his hand. "But enough." That night, as the Valkyries prepped bikes and polished gear for the next day's ride, Emma worked quietly in the corner, taping something to the garage wall. When the others gathered to see, they found a small poster board, covered in drawings, stick figures on motorcycles, red ribbons in the wind, hearts with wings. At the top, in big block letters written in green marker, "To the ones who still carry us." Harley read it and turned to Logan. "She believes in angels, you know. I know," he said. "She thinks we're surrounded by them." Harley looked at him. "Maybe we are." Logan took a walk alone that night, up the hill, past the pine grove. to the small stone where he'd once buried the compass his brother had carried into war. He knelt, took out the letter again, and whispered to the wind. "Claire, thank you for making me a father, for giving me the only reason I ever found my way back." He didn't bury the letter. He folded it and tucked it into the front pocket of his riding vest. It didn't belong to the past anymore. It would ride with him now. Sunday afternoon arrived under skies as blue as folded flags. The Run for the Lost was already being called the biggest veteran charity ride Crescent Ridge had ever seen. Over 70 riders lined the winding roads flanked by American flags and signs that read, "You are not forgotten." Local shops handed out water bottles, families waved from porches, and an honor guard stood at Memorial Point with rifles at their sides and silence in their eyes. But the part no one expected, the part no one would forget, came later, when the engines cooled, when the helmets came off, when it was time to say something that had waited too long. Back at the Iron Lantern, the Valkyries hosted a community meal. Long folding tables were filled with chili cornbread casseroles and stories. War stories, recovery stories. When I first met her, stories. Logan sat quietly near the end of one table, Emma leaning against him with her head on his shoulder, her red ribbon now tied gently around her braid. The old Harley WLA sat parked just outside the window, its tank gleaming like it had something to say. Harley stood behind the bar, watching everything, watching him. She could see it, the quiet in his shoulders, the way he wasn't bracing anymore, the way he let Emma lean fully into him, the way his left hand always stayed just slightly open now, as if ready to hold something. Or someone. Scarlett leaned beside her. "You gonna tell him?" Harley didn't answer right away. "'Cause if you don't," Scarlett added with a smile, "I will." Harley smirked. "You would?" "Oh, 100%. Probably during dessert." Harley gave her a look. "You're the worst." Scarlett grinned. "Or the best wingwoman you'll ever have." 10 minutes later, Scarlett walked up to the mic stand near the jukebox and tapped it twice. "All right, folks, quiet down a sec," she called out. "Before we wrap up this ride with heartburn and baked beans, I've got something to say." The room chuckled. "I've been riding with the Iron Valkyries for nearly a decade, and in that time, I've seen a lot: fights, reconciliations, breakdowns, breakthroughs. But I've never seen someone walk into our garage and change the entire temperature of the room by not saying a damn word." She pointed toward Logan. "And I sure as hell never thought some quiet ex-Marine with a beat-up old war bike and a little girl who believes in angels would show up and make us all remember why we started riding in the first place." Applause rippled through the crowd. Scarlett continued. "Now I know we joke, we tease. We say things like, 'Win and marry us all.'" Laughter broke out loud and knowing. Harley rolled her eyes but smiled. "But what I didn't know," Scarlett said, voice softening, "was that maybe someone actually would earn that kind of love." Now the room was quiet again. She stepped back, gestured toward Harley, and mouthed, "Go." Harley hesitated. Then she walked toward the mic, slow, purposeful. The crowd didn't cheer. They waited. She stood there for a beat, glancing briefly at Logan, who sat up straighter, brows slightly raised. "I was 12 the first time someone told me I was too much," she said. "Too loud, too tough, too sharp around the edges." Some in the crowd nodded. "I spent most of my life believing that love was something you earned only by softening, by shrinking, by silencing parts of yourself that made people uncomfortable." She looked directly at Logan now. "But then, a man walked into my life, carrying names on his chest, silence in his step, and grief in his eyes, and he didn't ask me to shrink. He didn't flinch at the edges. He just stood still until I didn't need to stand alone anymore." She paused, her voice trembling just slightly. "Logan West, You walked into our bar like a ghost, and you made us feel more alive than we have in years. You brought something into this place that none of us could name but all of us could feel. The room was utterly silent now, and I don't know if love always comes like this. Quiet, steady, earned, not declared. But I do know I'd rather ride the rest of this road with someone who carries 7 names than with someone who only ever spoke his own. She stepped down. The crowd parted. She walked up to him. He stood. And for a long moment, no one moved. Then she reached into her jacket pocket, pulled out something small. It wasn't a ring. It was his letter to Claire, folded carefully, edges worn. She placed it in his hand. I think she'd want you to carry this with someone. Logan looked down at the letter, then at Harley. Then he did something he hadn't done in 12 years. He reached forward not to shake a hand, not to salute, but to pull someone into an embrace that said everything words never could. The crowd didn't cheer. They stood, every single one of them, out of respect, out of understanding, out of awe. Jules' eyes glassy whispered, "This might be the first proposal I've ever seen that didn't involve a ring, and yet felt more real than any I've ever known." Emma beamed. "Told you. Angels ride motorcycles." That night, after most of the guests had gone home, Logan sat with Harley and Emma on the back steps, watching stars blink into place. He pulled out the letter one more time, but this time he didn't read it. He handed it to Emma. "Can I?" she asked. He nodded. She read it quietly under the porch light, then folded it, and said, "It doesn't sound like goodbye." "No," Logan whispered. "It never was. The morning after the proposal, that wasn't." But was the iron lantern opened its doors to quiet light and the soft hum of healing. The bar was nearly empty. Just Logan, Harley, and Jules, each nursing a mug of dark roast steam curling into the soft rays of sunlight pouring through the old wood-framed windows. Logan stood beside the jukebox, his hand resting on it, like it held stories only he could hear. Harley sat at the bar watching him. She hadn't said much that morning, not because there was nothing to say, but because sometimes, when love is real, silence says it best. Jules wiped a glass. "Feels different in here." Harley nodded. "Feels clean. Feels honest," Jules added. Logan turned slowly. "I want to show you something." They both looked up. He walked to the center of the room, the same spot where 5 women had once laughed and challenged him to win and marry us all. He slowly unbuttoned the top of his worn olive shirt, and then he pulled it open just enough to reveal it again. The POW tattoo. It wasn't flashy, wasn't colorful, just solid black ink etched into time. POW. Below it 7 names, all capital letters. No ranks, no dates, just names. Harley stood and walked slowly to him. Logan looked at her. "These were my brothers," he said. "Delta Recon, Afghanistan. 7 of us went into that valley. Only 1 came out." His voice didn't break. It had already broken long ago. "I carried them out in pieces, carried their dog tags. I came home with more bones in my soul than in my body." Harley swallowed hard. "I got this tattoo the day I left Bethesda." Logan continued. "I couldn't talk about it, couldn't process it. But I made an oath." "What kind of oath?" Harley whispered. Logan's eyes didn't leave hers. To live for all of us, to honor them, not by talking, but by being. She reached out and traced the edge of the ink with her fingers. He didn't flinch. Every night he said, "When I tuck Emma in, I whisper each of their names. It's how I keep them alive." Harley's voice caught in her throat. "That's why you didn't speak much at first." He nodded. "Talking cheapens it. They deserve more." She looked up at him. "So what changed?" Logan took her hand. "You." Later that afternoon, they took a ride. Just the 2 of them. The old Harley WLA roared down the empty stretch of highway that led to the Veteran Memorial Ridge. Logan wore his Marine Corps jacket. Harley wore one of his old green shirts over her own leather. They stopped at the ridge and looked out over the hills, where golden leaves rolled like waves beneath a September sky. Logan pulled a folded paper from his inside pocket. Another letter. But this one wasn't for Claire. It was for them. He handed it to Harley. "Open it." She opened it gently. Inside was a short paragraph in Logan's careful, blocky handwriting. "To those I carry, I found peace. She rides beside me now. Your stories ride with us. You are not forgotten. The mission has changed, but the oath remains. I live. For all of us." L.W. Harley stared at it, then folded it against her chest like it was a heartbeat. Neither of them said a word. But then Logan turned and did something he'd never done. He took a knee, not to propose, not with a ring, but with Emma's red ribbon in his hand. He looked up at Harley and said, "I don't need vows. I made mine the day I walked in and saw you hold your ground, while the world called you too much. I want to ride with that woman, love that woman, raise Emma beside that woman." She knelt, too. "No one's ever seen me like that before," she whispered. He smiled. "Then maybe you were waiting for someone who sees silence and knows it still speaks." That evening, Jules and Scarlett hung a new frame on the bar's back wall. It was a photograph from the ride. Logan on his WLA, Emma on the back holding a flag, and beside them, Harley in full Valkyrie gear helmet under her arm, wind in her hair. Above it, carved into the wooden frame, the silent oath, and beneath it in bold serif letters. "Some promises don't need words. Only the life you choose to live." The sun had barely risen, but the iron lantern was already alive. Not with the usual clatter of bottles or bar banter, but with the quiet sound of women in leather jackets, straightening centerpieces, children running between boots and chrome, and men, some old, some young, standing in silence, polishing their bikes, not for show, but for honor. It was Founders' Day at the newly renamed Valkyrie Haven. A day not just to remember the past, but to ride toward the future. Logan adjusted Emma's jacket. It was a bit too big for her, a hand-me-down from Scarlett, but the girl looked proud in it, especially with the Valkyrie patch stitched just beneath the American flag. "You ready, kiddo?" he asked softly. Emma gave a firm nod, her braid bouncing. "Born ready, Daddy." Harley walked out of the bar doors at that moment, wearing a tailored black leather jacket with subtle gold embroidery around the cuffs. The moment she stepped into the light, every head turned, not because she looked stunning, but because she looked home. Logan smiled as she approached. "You still sure about this?" he asked. Harley tilted her head. "About what? Sharing your throne?" She smirked. "Logan West, if you think this is a throne, then you clearly haven't cleaned the women's restroom during bike week." They both laughed, but the laughter faded into something softer, deeper. They didn't need a wedding, not yet. But what stood between them now was stronger than paper, stronger than rings. It was respect. It was sacrifice. It was that silent oath they both carried in different ways. Over 200 bikes lined the road leading out of town. Iron Valkyries, rolling thunders, a few Vietnam vets with flags strapped to rusted frames. Some had never met Logan, but word of the man with the POW MIA tattoo had traveled far. Logan's WLA led the way with Emma behind him and Harley riding just beside. Each turn of the tires echoed something sacred, brotherhood, freedom memory. As they passed the hill near the old mill, Logan raised his fist. The entire line stopped. There atop the ridge stood 7 white wooden crosses. No names, no flowers. Just 7 small American flags fluttering in the morning wind. Logan removed his helmet. Harley followed. No one said a word. Then, slowly, Logan stepped forward, knelt before the first cross, and whispered their names. One by one. Harley watched. And then Emma, without being asked, walked up beside him, placed a tiny folded paper at the base of the last cross, and whispered, "Thank you for my daddy." Tears welled in Harley's eyes. Not from sadness, but from the sheer grace of the moment. Sometimes you don't need loud tributes or long speeches. Sometimes you ride. And that is the prayer. The evening turned golden. The lanterns lit the bar's wooden porch like fireflies caught in a jar. Music hummed softly blues old country, and once or twice a slow waltz that made couples pull each other close on the worn floorboards. Scarlett brought out a chocolate cake that read, "For the ones who ride ahead in hand-piped icing." Jules tapped a spoon against his coffee mug and stood atop a crate. "A toast," he said. Every head turned. To the silent ones, to those who carried more than we ever saw, and to the ones who found their voice not through noise, but through kindness. He looked at Logan, and to the man who reminded us that the loudest love is the one that never has to shout. Harley raised her glass to Logan West, father, rider, keeper of oaths. They all raised theirs. To Logan, Emma tugged his sleeve. "Daddy." He knelt beside her. She leaned in. "Can we stay here forever?" Logan smiled. "I think we already are." Just before midnight, Logan and Harley stepped outside. The bar still buzzed inside, but out here, it was quiet. Still. The stars above the ridge shimmered, and somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled lonely, but proud. Logan reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded cloth. It was the ribbon. Emma's red ribbon, the one that once held his pain in place. Now, it tied him to joy. He handed it to Harley. "Thought you might want to hold it." Harley looked at it for a long time, then tied it around her wrist. They stood in silence. And then Logan said quietly, "I used to think my life ended in that valley. Now I think it just began there." Harley took his hand. "And I used to think no man could carry what I carry. But now I know you already did." They mounted the bike again. No destination this time, just riding because the road was there. As they took off into the starlit distance, Jules stepped onto the porch and watched them go. Scarlett joined him, coffee in hand. She looked at the road, then at Jules. "You think they'll ever come back?" Jules shook his head with a smile. "Riders don't say goodbye, sweetheart. They just leave a little bit of their soul behind." A small wooden sign now stands near the entrance to Valkyrie Haven. Burned into the wood with care, in honor of those who ride without sound, love without words, and live without fear. The silent oath. Where are you watching from today? We love hearing from kind souls all over the world, so drop a comment and let us know where you're tuning in. If this story touched your heart or made you think about life a little differently, consider subscribing to Soul Moments. We share true-to-the-heart stories every week about kindness, redemption, and the quiet heroes among us. Thank you for spending time with us. Your presence here means more than you know.